Have you ever wondered why your silence unsettles people? Why the moment you stop explaining, they start accusing? Why your calm presence feels threatening to those who used to feed off your reactions? It's because silence removes their control. And when your silence is not just about staying quiet, but about choosing sabr, choosing restraint, and choosing Allah, it becomes terrifying to the ones who thrive on chaos. They don't fear your words, they fear your discipline. They don't hate your voice, they hate your peace. And Allah says in the Quran, "And be patient over what they say, and avoid them with gracious avoidance." Surah Al-Muzammil 73:10. That's not weakness, that's divine instruction. That's Allah telling you you don't need to react to every insult, every test, every noise. Because silence with Allah is not emptiness, it's elevation. And when you stop responding to people and start listening to your Lord, you become untouchable. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them hate the silence. Because the one who is silent for the sake of Allah is louder in the heavens than the noisiest of people on earth. 1. Your silence protects you from the noise of Shaytaan. In today's world, people are constantly talking, arguing online, defending their pride, and chasing the last word just to prove a point. But very few stop to realize the spiritual weight of silence. You see, silence in Islam is not just about keeping your mouth closed, it's about protecting your heart, your soul, and your hereafter. It's a conscious choice to remove yourself from the noise that opens the door for Shaytaan to enter. Every extra word that has no benefit becomes a risk. Because when we speak without thinking, when we argue just to win, when we shout out of anger or pride, we begin to fall into the traps that Shaytaan sets. He doesn't always need to make us commit big sins. Sometimes, all he needs is for us to speak carelessly, to engage in useless debates, to backbite without realizing it. And that's how he chips away at our light, little by little. But when you choose silence, especially in moments when your ego is burning and you want to respond, to defend, to fight back, that's when real strength shows. You are not running away. You are guarding your tongue like a soldier guards the gates of a city. You're saying, "I value my peace more than this argument. I fear Allah more than I need to be right." And that decision, in that moment, becomes an act of worship. The Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, taught us, "Whoever believes in Allah and the last day should speak good or remain silent." Bukhari, Muslim. This isn't just a wise saying, it's a shield. It protects you from saying something you'll regret. It stops you from harming others with your words. It prevents you from falling into sin that might feel justified in the moment, but leaves scars in your heart. Shaytaan loves noise. He loves it when you raise your voice in anger. He loves it when you talk about others behind their back. He loves to make you feel like silence is weakness. But silence, when chosen for the sake of Allah, becomes a sword. It cuts off the whispers of Shaytaan before they take root in your actions. It silences the ego, cools the flame of pride, and turns your focus inward toward your soul. In silence, you find space to think. In silence, you give your heart a chance to breathe. You realize you don't need to fight every battle. Some battles are won by simply not showing up to them. That kind of discipline isn't common. It requires a heart that is trained by Dhikr, a mind that is conscious of Allah, and a soul that prefers Allah's pleasure over worldly victories. So the next time you're provoked, the next time your tongue wants to lash out, remember this: silence isn't empty, it's full of wisdom, it's full of reward. And most importantly, it's full of Allah's protection. 2. They can't read you, so they try to break you. When you choose silence, especially around people who used to feed off your emotions, something interesting happens. They become uncomfortable. They start guessing. They overthink. They try harder to get a reaction out of you. Why? Because your silence blocks their access. It frustrates them that they can no longer read your emotions, measure your weakness, or control your behavior like they used to. When you stop explaining yourself, stop responding to their passive-aggressive comments, and stop justifying your actions, you strip them of the one thing they crave: control over your energy. And that scares them more than anything else. You see, some people don't care about the truth. They just want a reaction. They want to feel powerful by making you feel small. They test your patience, not because you're wrong, but because your calmness exposes their chaos. Your silence is like a mirror, it reflects their insecurities. And when you stop reacting, they are forced to confront themselves. That's why they'll push harder. They'll mock your silence. They'll say things like, "You think you're better?" or "Why aren't you talking?" But what they really mean is, "Why isn't this working anymore?" Your silence reveals their weakness and your strength. And let's be honest, silence is not easy, especially when you're hurt, when your heart wants to scream back, when you know you could defend yourself, prove your point, expose their lies. But in those moments, the believer remembers, "I don't need to be understood by people, I need to be seen by Allah." You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Your Lord already knows who you are. He knows your intentions, your struggles, your silence. And that is enough. You staying silent doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've chosen a higher path, one that protects your dignity and your peace. Sometimes people will try to provoke you just to say, "See, you're just like the rest." Don't give them that satisfaction. Don't let them drag you down to their level just to make them feel better. Stay above, walk away, and know that Allah sees the restraint you're holding back with. That silence is not weakness. It is a test you are passing with honor. Because when they can no longer read you, they can no longer use you. And when they can't control you, they'll call you cold, arrogant, distant, anything to get you back into the game. But don't go back. Silence is your shield. Keep it wrapped around you. Because as long as you remain silent for the sake of Allah, no one can break what Allah is holding together. 3. Allah listens to what others can't hear. There are moments in life when the pain in your heart is too deep to put into words. You sit in silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because what you feel can't be expressed in any language. And in that silence, when the world thinks you've gone quiet, something beautiful happens. Allah is listening. You see, people only understand what you say out loud. They listen to your voice, your explanations, your defenses. But Allah, He listens to what never even leaves your lips. He hears the whisper inside your chest. He sees the tear that never falls. He understands the grief, the exhaustion, the confusion, even when you can't find the right words. And this is where the believer's strength is different from the rest of the world. While others panic when they're not being heard, you remain calm because your heart is already connected to the one who knows every secret within it. Allah says in the Quran, He knows what is in the hearts. Surah Al-Taghabun 64:4. That means before you even open your mouth, He already knows the truth. So what need is there to argue with people? What benefit is there in trying to explain yourself to those who have already decided not to understand you? Your silence in that moment becomes a dua. Your patience becomes an act of worship. And your trust in Allah becomes the strongest response you could ever give. There's a peace that comes when you finally stop depending on people to validate your pain. You realize they will always judge from the outside. They don't see the nights you cried to Allah. They don't feel the fire of restraint when you choose not to respond. They don't know the strength it takes to stay silent when your soul wants to scream. But Allah does. And He rewards you for every second you hold back for His sake. Every moment you don't reply out of anger. Every time you keep your dignity instead of engaging in meaningless arguments, He writes it all down. And here's something even more powerful. Your silence sometimes says more to Allah than your words ever could. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Indeed, Allah does not look at your appearance or your wealth, but He looks at your hearts and your deeds." Muslim, that means your sincerity, your restraint, your quiet patience. These are louder in the heavens than any argument on earth. When you sit in sujood and cry without saying a single word, when your lips move only in dhikr and your tongue remains still in front of your enemies, that's where angels gather around you. That's where your silence becomes your elevation. So don't think your silence goes unnoticed. Don't think your pain is hidden. And don't think your calmness is weakness. The world may not hear your quiet, but your Lord hears everything. And when you choose silence, not out of fear, but out of faith, that silence becomes a direct line between your heart and your Creator. And that is a connection no human can interrupt. 4. Real strength is found in the heart that chooses peace over ego. In this world, people often confuse loudness with power. They think the one who argues the most is the strongest. The one who dominates a conversation must be right. The one who responds with fire is fearless. But in the eyes of Allah, strength is something entirely different. Real strength is not how quickly you speak, it's how firmly you can hold your tongue. It's not how loud you can get, it's how silent you can remain when your ego is provoked. And the strongest people in the sight of Allah are not those who win arguments, but those who walk away from them even when they are right. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I guarantee a house in paradise for one who gives up arguing even if he is right." Abu Dawood. That hadith alone changes everything, because it means the reward is not for who wins, it's for who lets go. Not because they lost, but because they rose above. You see, the ego is always hungry. It wants attention, it wants to be heard, it wants to be right, even at the cost of your peace. But when you begin to train your heart to choose Allah over your ego, everything shifts. You stop chasing victory in arguments. You stop needing people to agree with you. You stop trying to prove your worth to those who were never meant to understand your soul. And in that process, you become free. Because every time you say, "I won't argue, I won't lower myself, I won't engage in this for the sake of my Lord," you gain something far greater than a moment of pride. You gain closeness to Allah. You protect your dignity, you build your patience, you preserve your character. And that is true power. Choosing peace over ego is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because it means swallowing your pride when your name is being dragged. It means staying quiet when your heart is begging to respond. It means walking away, not because you can't fight, but because you know your silence is worth more than any verbal victory. And the more you practice this, the stronger your soul becomes. You begin to feel the sweetness of self-control. You begin to value your inner peace more than public approval. And you realize something most people never understand, that the strongest person is not the one who shouts the loudest, it's the one who remains silent, smiles, and says, "Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel." Allah is sufficient for me, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Think about it. How many arguments have you won but lost your peace? How many times did you prove your point but felt empty afterward? That's because ego wins always come at a cost. But the believer doesn't live for ego, the believer lives for the akhirah. And every time you give up the need to win in this world, Allah prepares something better for you in the next. So let others talk. Let them assume. Let them try to bring you down with their words. You just keep choosing peace, keep walking with Allah. Because there's no greater strength than a heart that chooses silence over pride, patience over anger, and the pleasure of Allah over the applause of people. 5. The silent are often the most watched. There is something deeply unsettling to people when you stop reacting. When you become silent, calm, unbothered, you create a space they don't know how to handle. Because most people thrive on attention, on noise, on visible emotion. They want to be heard, seen, and felt. And when you no longer give them the response they expect, they begin to observe you more. They begin to study your movements, your expressions, your silence, not out of admiration, but out of confusion. Because silence, when it is intentional and rooted in faith, carries a weight that is louder than words. And that weight begins to press on their insecurities. The one who stays quiet begins to shine not through performance, but through presence. You become watched because your silence becomes power. When everyone else is rushing to speak and you choose to remain calm, composed, and centered, it creates contrast. It makes people wonder, what does he know that we don't? Why isn't she reacting like the rest of us? And that mystery can either attract respect or provoke discomfort. Because some people hate the idea that they can't read you, can't predict you, can't control how you feel. Your silence makes you unpredictable. It keeps your power with you instead of handing it over. And when you stay silent in the face of ignorance, you hold the highest ground, the one where your value is not up for negotiation. But here's where it becomes even more beautiful. When your silence is not for pride or strategy, but for Allah, when you remain silent because you're guarding your tongue, your heart, your character, that silence becomes ibadah. It becomes an act of worship. And in those quiet moments, while people are watching and misunderstanding, Allah is recording every second of restraint, every breath of patience, every act of emotional discipline. And that's where you rise, not in their sight, but in His. Remember, you don't need to explain your silence. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Part of the perfection of one's Islam is his leaving that which does not concern him." Tirmidhi. That means it's not just okay to pull your energy back, it's a sign of wisdom. The less you speak, the more you reflect. The less you argue, the more you grow. And the more you step away from drama and back into your own spiritual path, the more your light increases, even if people don't understand it. And yes, they may talk about you. They may create stories to fill the silence you've left, but none of that touches your soul. Because your peace doesn't come from being understood, it comes from being aligned with Allah. Your silence may leave people curious, even frustrated, but it leaves you protected. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them assume. You just stay silent, stay sincere, and stay close to your Lord. Because in a noisy world, the one who learns to speak less and listen to Allah more becomes truly powerful. 6. Silence builds you from the inside out. We often underestimate silence. We think it's just the absence of noise. But silence, when practiced intentionally and for the sake of Allah, is one of the most powerful tools for internal transformation. While the world is busy running toward microphones, social media platforms, and constant validation, the believer understands that real growth doesn't come from being louder, it comes from becoming quieter inside. Because silence is not just what you withhold from others, it's what you allow yourself to finally face within. In silence, your distractions fall away. The voices of the crowd fade, the opinions of others grow distant, and you are left with the most important conversation, the one between you and your soul. That's when the real work begins. You start to hear your thoughts more clearly. You begin to notice the patterns in your emotions. You realize how many things you've been running from: fears, wounds, regrets, all buried under noise. And it's in this space of stillness that Allah allows you to confront what the world has kept hidden. Silence strips away the masks. And when you are no longer performing for people, you are finally able to meet the version of yourself that needs healing, guidance, and sincerity. This is why silence is not for the weak, it's for the disciplined. It takes courage to sit with yourself. It takes strength to not respond when your pride is challenged. It takes deep spiritual maturity to pause before reacting, to breathe before speaking, to consult your heart before your tongue. And the more you practice this, the more Allah opens your inner world. He begins to show you where your anger hides, where your ego rises, where your wounds bleed, not to shame you, but to help you grow. Because growth never happens in chaos, it happens in quiet. Just like a seed must be buried in still earth to grow, the soul must find silence to expand. And in that stillness, you develop qualities that can never be gained through talking. You develop sabr, patience, not only with others, but with your own healing. You develop taqwa, an awareness of how your reactions are seen by Allah. You develop tawakkul, a silent trust that allows you to surrender even when the world is pressing on your back. These are the qualities of the believer who is not just surviving, but rising, and it all starts in silence. Don't believe the lie that silence is passiveness. Don't let this noisy world convince you that your value lies in being seen and heard all the time. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who speak the least, because they're not concerned with being loud, they're concerned with being real, with being sincere, with pleasing Allah. They know that one word spoken at the right time, with the right intention, is heavier than 1,000 shouted in ego. And they've trained themselves not to react like everyone else. They pause, they observe, they reflect, and then only if necessary they speak with wisdom. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Whoever remains silent has been saved." Tirmidhi. This isn't just about avoiding drama, it's about saving your heart, saving your hereafter. Because silence is not just a tool to escape conflict, it is a lifestyle that protects your soul. The believer who walks in silence walks closer to Allah. Because in silence, your dhikr increases, your connection to the Quran deepens, your thoughts begin to revolve around purpose rather than opinion. You become less reactive, more grounded, less emotional, more intentional. You stop rushing to respond and start slowing down to realign. This world doesn't teach you how to be still. It teaches you to hustle, shout, prove, compete. But silence is the language of those who trust their Lord. When you are silent, you're saying, "I don't need to explain myself. Allah sees me." You're saying, "I don't need this argument to define me. Allah will defend me." You're saying, "I will protect my peace even if it costs me my pride." And that kind of strength cannot be bought, taught, or faked. It's earned in those long, lonely moments of inner struggle, where you choose Allah over everything else. So, let silence build you. Let it teach you. Let it become your teacher when words fail. Because every second you spend in quiet reflection, every time you hold your tongue when your ego wants to speak, every time you go back to your prayer mat instead of back into conflict, you are not just staying silent. You are becoming someone Allah raises in rank. And in that quiet transformation, you will find more peace, more wisdom, and more strength than this entire world could ever offer. 7. Your silence is a dua the world can't interrupt. There's a kind of silence that is not empty. It is full of divine conversation. A silence that doesn't mean you have nothing to say, but that you've chosen to speak only to Allah. In a world that demands constant updates, explanations, and emotional performances, choosing silence isn't just hard, it's revolutionary. But for the believer, silence is more than strategy. It's surrender. When your heart is heavy but your lips are sealed, when the pain is deep but you don't scream, when the injustice is loud but you don't retaliate, that is not weakness. That is dua in its purest form. That is your soul speaking directly to the Lord of the worlds, uninterrupted by noise, drama, or human misunderstanding. There are moments when words cannot carry the weight you're feeling, when explaining yourself would only cheapen what's inside, when every sentence feels too small for the storm in your chest. And that is when silence becomes sacred, because Allah does not need words to understand you. He created your thoughts before you ever formed them. He hears what you never say. He sees what no one else can see. Indeed, He is knowing of that within the breasts. Surah Al-Mulk 67:13. That means you are never truly silent because Allah is always listening to the voice inside your heart. And that's what the world doesn't understand. When they push you, insult you, provoke you, and you don't respond, they think you've given up. But what they can't see is that you're doing something far more powerful. You're handing it over to Allah. You're transferring the pain from your chest to His mercy. You're trusting that His justice is better than your reaction. You're placing your dignity in His hands, not theirs. And in that moment, your silence becomes louder in the heavens than any words you could say on earth. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Beware of the supplication of the oppressed, for there is no barrier between it and Allah." Bukhari, Muslim. What is the supplication of the oppressed? Sometimes it's not a loud cry or a dramatic prayer. Sometimes it's the quiet that follows betrayal. The deep breath after being slandered, the silent tears at night when no one else knows. These moments, when you don't say anything to the people but turn completely to Allah, are among the most powerful forms of dua you can ever make, because they come from a place of full trust, full pain, and full surrender. Your silence in these moments is not weakness, it is worship. It is a sign of tawakkul, trusting Allah, even when the world misunderstands you. It is sabr, patience, not just with your circumstances, but with your soul. It is iman, faith that Allah is enough. And when you live like this, when you walk quietly but with full conviction that Allah is your defender, your protector, your witness, then you no longer need to win in the eyes of people, because you've already won in the sight of your Lord. Imagine this. Every time you held back a response you knew would feel good in the moment, but hurt your hereafter that was written for you as a reward. Every time you walked away instead of fueling a fire, Allah was raising your rank. Every time you wiped your own tears and said, "Ya Allah, I leave it to you," the angels were recording your strength. These silent moments become the bricks that build your fortress of faith. And one day, you'll look back and realize the times you stayed silent for Allah's sake were the moments you were being shaped, purified, and elevated. So let the world talk, let them misjudge you, let them say you're distant, cold, strange. You know what you're doing. You are guarding your soul. You are protecting your akhirah. You are walking a path that is invisible to people, but clear to your Lord. Your silence may confuse them, but it pleases Allah. And when you are silent in the dunya, Allah promises to speak for you in the akhirah. When every tongue is tied and every secret is exposed, your silence today will become your shield tomorrow. Because in the end, the most powerful voice is not always the one that shouts, but the one that stays quiet and puts its full trust in the one who never sleeps, never misses, and never forgets. If the world misunderstands your silence, let them. If they accuse you of weakness because you don't respond, let them. If they try to provoke you into defending yourself, explaining yourself, or lowering yourself, stay still, stay silent, stay sincere, because silence is not your downfall. It is your elevation. It is not your weakness. It is your weapon. It is not your escape. It is your connection to Allah. We live in a world that rewards loudness, loud opinions, loud anger, loud egos. But the path to Jannah is often walked quietly. The greatest moments of worship are done in silence. The tears you cry alone at night, the quiet sujood no one sees, the pain you bury in your heart, while you say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. And those who learn to protect their tongue, to guard their energy, to remove themselves from useless arguments and empty noise, they are the ones who walk with the angels. They are the ones Allah raises without the world even knowing. Each time you stayed quiet when your ego wanted to shout. Each time you walked away when your pride wanted to fight. Each time you trusted Allah when your heart wanted revenge. You weren't losing. You were being prepared, strengthened, purified. You were being trained to become someone who doesn't just live for the dunya, but someone who walks with the akhirah in mind. They hate your silence because it makes you unpredictable. They fear your silence because it means they can no longer control you. But most of all, your silence frightens them because they can feel it. You're not powered by attention anymore. You're powered by Allah. So protect your silence, honor it, let it speak for you, let it guard you. Because in this noisy world, the silent believer is the one walking closest to his Lord. And when Allah is guiding your silence, you don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need to keep walking with your head down, your heart open, and your trust placed firmly in the one who sees everything. May Allah grant us the wisdom to remain silent when it's better than speaking, the strength to walk away when our ego wants to fight, and the patience to trust His justice when the world turns against us. Ameen.